Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. In this episode, I chat with Cape Cod police officer Bill Norton. Bill and I discuss some of his most intense and funny moments on the job. We also talk about Facebook and posting on social media in general. When you start voicing your politics, and is it worth it? Especially when at times you can lose friends and family. And towards the end, we get into a lengthy discussion about whether or not the media is capable of being the watchdog they're supposed to be without crapping all over the police. It was a really fun interview. Bill's a great guy. Really gracious of him to come on the show. So without further ado, here's episode number 18.
This is Things Police See, first-hand accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Bill, thank you for coming on the podcast, my man.
Steve, thanks for having me. I was actually humbled when you sent me a message asking if I would come on.
Oh, thank you. No, I it's so funny. I have so many cops in my life and in the periphery of my life from the East Coast and West Coast. And, I've been turned down before. So I try to think about like who might want to come on, wouldn't mind being interviewed, And then I've not done much planning in who I'll ask. And then just actually what happened was I saw a Facebook post of yours. And it was a good, strong, conservative, police-oriented Facebook post. And I go, Bill would be great. I wonder if he would mind doing it. So I thought about it, and I'm like, might as well. I'll just ask him, So I'm happy you came on, man. And that Facebook stuff, I recently got burned with that. Things can get pretty heated on there, with people's opinions.
Oh yeah. I've lost family members from it.
Yeah, I admire you for just say your piece, what you believe. That's what you should do. And I think my friends list on Facebook is a little different because I do some stand up here and there, stand up comedy. So I have a lot of actors and comedians on my list, and it's mostly the younger ones. If you're in your 20s and you're far left, you are a kind of a dangerous creature to me. And what I mean by saying that is I got into this argument a couple of weeks ago that really taught me a lesson where I was just adding to a conversation about universal health care and kind of just saying, hey, you might want to think about these points of it. By the end of it, I went back on Facebook. There was 30 comments roasting me. Calling me racist and all this stuff it's like stuff you read about, And by the end of the conversation, they were taking screenshots. They had Googled imaged me and they were making fun of me, and that's fine. I can take, you can bust my balls. But then they started, someone went on this podcast and gave it a 1-star review solely on my comment on Facebook. Just because they wanted to screw with my life in a real way. And that's what I mean by dangerous. Like that, I would never think to try to affect someone's life in that way, No,
and that's the thing with social media. I don't mind a debate, but when things start to get personal with name calling or just insulting, because in my opinion, it's because they've realized they've lost the argument. So what are they going to resort to? It's going to be personal attacks or something just to set you off, But I try to stay out of that mud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Just try to say my piece, and then if they want to eat each other over it, they can do that.
Yep. Exactly.
So you are a sergeant. Last time I checked, still a sergeant. Okay. Yep. You're sergeant at a neighboring department to where I worked. So we worked with each other now and then. I remember making a few phone calls over to your agency when I was the patrolman in charge of my shift and needed a little advice. So I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem at all. It's
a pretty tight-knit community on Cape Cod of police, so everybody's pretty supportive. But did you start? You came from off Cape, right?
Yeah. So when I was originally hired, I was hired out in Western Mass, a little town called Rutland.
Oh, okay. I know Rutland. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you did a couple years there and then came to Cape?
Yeah. I was actually, I was a summer cop. Late 90s, I want to say. I started doing that a little town called Scituate.
Yeah.
Up on the kind of the North Shore. So I was there for about 5 years. And then I got hired by Rutland, Mass. And then I came to the department that I work with now. I've been there for 18 years.
Wow, it's been 18 years. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Bill, can you talk a little bit about being a summer cop? Because a lot of the people who listen come from bigger agencies or aren't familiar with that. They have a reserve program where the reserves are very limited capacity, but that was not the case in Massachusetts back when you were doing it.
No, and it's changed. I mean, in the 18 years that, or it's longer than that, 20 plus years now, when I first started being a summer, it's a lot different now because a lot of the agencies see the liability in it, like
Right.
having not as well trained. But back in the day, I was, I looked just like a full-time cop, full duty belt. And what our main functions were parking violations, or mine specifically. I walked in Scituate. I walked the waterfront down there, and it was parking violations or just moving kids along so they weren't loitering and stuff like that. Real minor stuff.
And that's a pretty busy place though for someone who's new. Police work is so diverse. There's so many different things that could happen to you walking down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny because I kind of felt that a little bit when I came on the job. There was a window between going to police academy, so we worked as like full patrolmen for a while, and
Right.
I felt ill-equipped. You definitely feel like there's so many. It takes so long to. I think the learning curve for being a cop is like 5 years. And it's not the best for the officer, I think, or like you said, for liability for the town.
Yeah, and I tell you, even being on the job 18 years for me, I know that I don't know everything now. So putting somebody that green, that young, in a position, I can see why agencies now don't. A lot of them have backed away from it or have changed the way they do it. Right now, they're more like where I work now. They're community service officers. They're there for directions. They're not armed. They don't look like full-time officers. So they're basically there to kind of help people around the town.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember when I first was on, we had, and this is bizarre, but we used to have the summer guys would ride with us, and they were full gear. They looked just like regular cops. And another guy I worked with had a summer cop with him, and we don't know too much about the summer cops. They get hired, and then they direct traffic, and then they get put on a shift with you sometimes. And this summer cop, they went to break up a party, and the kid came out. He was kind of a punk, kind of a smart ass, and the summer cop slapped him across the face.
I'm guessing that was his last summer.
Yeah, that was his last shift. But it was like, wow, you really don't get it. Oh, man. Good times.
Yeah.
Glad I wasn't part of that. Bill, can you tell us about your first hot call that you responded to, the first call that really got your adrenaline going?
Oh, jeepers. Thinking back 18 years. I can't remember maybe the first hot call, but you have those calls that they just kind of stick with you. And,
Right.
I mean, maybe it was the first hot call. I don't know. But let's see. There was this one time I'm on patrol, and I wasn't dispatched to this. So I'm driving down the main road of town, and it's like 2 a.m. And I look to the left. You check the buildings as you're driving around. And I look to the left, and I thought I saw somebody moving around inside the store. It was like it used to be an old barbecue place. Great food. But it was like 2 a.m. I was like, this shouldn't be anybody in there. So I just pull in there. And sometimes after midnight, you're seeing shadow people and stuff like that. It's like, was somebody moving? Was that?
Definitely.
So I pulled in there, and I get out, not even thinking somebody's in there, and I look in the front door, the glass window, and I see like 6 people in there. I'm like, holy crap, there's people in there, and I bang on the door because you can see them all kind of like they're like drinking and kind of partying and stuff like that, and they look at me, and you saw all their eyes just like just blew up.
Right.
And then they scattered like rats. They just were like all over the place. So now I'm by myself. The only thing I've called in is that I'm just checking a building. So now they all scatter, and I know there's a back entrance to this place. So I'm like, crap, they're all going to boogie to to the back of this place and get out the back.
Right.
So I ran to the back, and I'm like, crap, now they're going to go out the front. So I basically did laps around the building. I just kept running around the building until my backup arrived. And once the backup arrived, we were able to get them. There was 6 kids. One of them was an employee there. Of
course.
But they weren't supposed to be there after hours. And we ended up getting them all, luckily.
That's
but that
funny.
That one sticks out. Yeah.
Oh, man.
There was a... Go ahead.
I was going to say that's like a dream, having access to a place like that when you're, underage or very young and drinking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was probably one of them that really sticks out. That was a good one. Another funny one was me and another officer. We had a day at court. And this isn't a call for service, either a hot call, but it's just it's one of those things that kind of sticks in you whenever you sitting around a campfire and you're sharing stories.
Right.
Me and another guy were at court, and we're sitting there at court waiting for our trial to start. Before our trial, there was a guy who they were doing a bail hearing on, and I'm guessing him and his old lady must have had outs, because she was the one that put up the bail, and she wanted her money back. So the judge goes, okay, so we're gonna give you your money back. He's gonna be held. And then all of a sudden the kid realized, wait a minute, I'm going to the big house. So he just kind of like dropped down, and the other officer and I, we kind of look at each other, because we're like, okay, we kind of know what's going to happen now. He beat feet out of there. He got out of the court before the bailiffs could take him in. So I go out the front door of the place. The other officer goes out another side door, and now the alarms are going off in the place. And coincidentally, as I'm coming out the front door, a UPS is coming down the front of the building. I flag down this UPS driver, because now the kid he's like out by the main road.
Right.
So I jump on the UPS truck, and I'm not. This is people don't believe this story when I tell them. I jump onto the UPS truck and I go, follow that guy. And the guy goes, are you serious? And I go, yeah, I'm serious. So we started rolling after him in this UPS truck. And then we get about 75 yards down the road, and I hop out, and he ended up getting himself stuck in like a swamp. So we got him out, and we brought him back to court. And now our suits are all covered in swamp water and stuff. So that was pretty funny.
I heard about that. I always meant to ask you about it. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that UPS driver's it's like a movie, I'm commandeering this vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a story that some of the guys make me tell the new guys whenever they come on board.
It's awesome. Bill, can you remember like a very strange or bizarre thing that you had to deal with on the job so far?
Oh yeah, one of the strangest things that I've ever had to deal with, me and another officer. Again, it's after midnight. We get a call for a guy that's broken into the house. I think it was the husband that called us, and the guy was still at the house. So we get there, and the guy is still in the house. The wife comes down to us from the back of the house, and we're talking. We're like, hey, what's going on? She was like, I don't know who this guy is. He came into our house. We were all sleeping, and we see him, outside our doorway, and we hop up, and of course they're freaked out. They're like,
they're like in bed, and he's standing outside there.
Yeah, he's standing outside the hallway, and they have kids in the house and stuff. So they get out and they start talking to him. They're like, what are you doing here? What are you doing in our house? And he's like, I'm here, and they're killing babies here. I'm here to kill the baby killers. And they're like, what?
Oh.
So they're like, holy mackerel. So, I guess they got this guy down to the kitchen and called us. So then we get there. The wife came down to us, is telling us this. And, all of a sudden, here comes the guy out the door, down towards us. So, we keep our distance from him, and we're like, hey, what's going on? And he tells us the same thing. He was like, well, I heard they were killing babies here, and I came here to kill the baby killers. We're like, what? We're like, this, obviously something's not right on board.
Right.
So we're like, okay, are you armed or anything like that? And just before we start to pat him down, he real quickly goes to like right in the small of his back. He reaches back there and pulls out this huge friggin' knife. And we're like, holy crap. So we backed right away and obviously took precautions.
Right.
And made him drop the knife. So, I mean, come to find out, obviously it was drug related and stuff, but that one was pretty bizarre.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
Especially the edged weapons like that. They say, what they always teach us, someone within 21 feet can easily take your life. Did you have like your finger on the trigger? Were you thinking like this could be a long report? Yeah,
I mean, it happened so quick. I knew we had our weapons out. I didn't have it on the trigger, but I'm backing away as we're telling him to drop the knife, and the knife just went down pretty quick. And then we took him into custody. But I mean, for that whole time, you're figuring that guy's been in that house that whole time. He's been talking to people inside the house. Your guard gets kind of let down. So
right.
You're thinking, okay, he's not so much of a threat if he hasn't done anything yet. And then all of a sudden he pulls this knife out of the small of his back.
How old was this guy?
Oh, at the time he was probably late 30s, early 40s. He's since passed away.
Oh, okay. Frequent flyer for you guys?
Yeah, he was that was the first time he came up on our radar. That was the first time we had ever dealt with him. But after that, we had dealt with him several more times.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no good. That's I had a similar call like that. They that is the most terrifying thing for anybody, I think, if you wake up and there's someone like looking at you when you're asleep. Just
oh my God.
It's awful. I don't even like when my kids do it. Like when they come in the bedroom and I open my eyes and they're standing there. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know. I couldn't. I don't know how those folks were so composed. How the husband didn't beat the snot out of the guy or something. But I would think, and that was, God, that had to have been about 13 years ago now, 14 years ago, maybe a little longer. In this day and age, though, I'm not sure he's walking out of that back door. I'm sure there's enough people that are armed now that, he was probably lucky he didn't get shot that night. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely. I think you tell someone once when they're in your house in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
Bill, can you tell us about like the most intense or terrifying call that you've dealt with?
Well, that's one. The one that I just mentioned. Another one that kind of sticks up. I mean, every call you kind of go on now, more recently, you're amped up a little bit more than, say, I was when I first started the job or got used to the job. Now, with the way things are going,
with all the police shootings,
yeah. People cops getting ambushed, or just the lack of respect where there's like a total disregard for life, no matter who it is. But every call now is kind of intense. But I remember one call I was just a patrolman, maybe a year and a half on the job, and I was with my sergeant, and we got a call and this guy was a frequent flyer. I heard about him before I first dealt with him. We got a call because he was saying there were some folks coming down from Hyannis that were gonna work him over, and they were gonna come down and either stab him or whatever. That's what he was afraid of. So we go over to the house, and as soon as we arrive, we see a knife stuck into the door frame, on the outside of the door frame. There's a knife stuck in the door frame. So we're like, what the heck? So now we start banging on the door, trying to get somebody to come to the door. Finally, the kid that called us, we see him kind of come into the hallway. Like when you look through the door, you can see down this long hallway. Right. But you just see the silhouette of him. You can't see him because it's dark out. It's after midnight. So, but as I see him, I can see that he's holding two knives in each hand. So I'm like, he's armed. So we start backing away. He gets closer to the door, and of course we're ready. And he comes out. He comes just outside, and we're like, hey, we know him, so we call him by name. Hey, drop the knives, and he dropped them right away. So then we, just for our protection, we cuffed him up, and we were like, hey, what's going on? And then he explained it to us. So no charges on him. He had armed himself because he was afraid. But for us, we were, not going to take a chance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think people understand, a lot of people don't understand, you probably find the same thing, that Hyannis is not like a real nice area, but everybody else in the entire world thinks it's it's like the Kennedy's playground. It's like this beautiful place where there's zero crime. Isn't that strange?
Yeah, it is. And it's spread out. Hyannis is a lot different than what it was even when I first started. I don't want to trash Hyannis because it's not all of Hyannis, but Hyannis, and there's other towns on the outskirts of Hyannis that are all really, it's kind of going downhill. They're just, it's drugs, it's, the same crimes you might see in the cities, off Cape. We get them down here, maybe not as frequent, but there was a time where you didn't hear any of this stuff. It never happened down here. And
yeah, like drive-by shootings and all that.
Yep. I mean, just the last few months, there's been several stabbings down here. Obviously, shootings up in Hyannis, is areas up there, they get shootings all the time. But it doesn't make all the news that you hear, when you get news from like Boston, Roxbury, Dorchester, things like that.
Yeah, I remember the thing that really made me realize, two things that really made me realize like Hyannis was going to the next level before I left was, I was a natural resource officer to start, and the first 4 years I worked there, I met up with a state game warden at some point during my shift, and he had just come from like Fresh Holes in Hyannis.
Fresh Hole Road.
Yeah. And they were breaking up like dog fights. And I was like, dog fights? He's like, oh yeah, dog fights. There's, cockfights. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it's not it's not nice over there. And then then the big thing was, remember that woman was tied to a tree and burnt alive?
Yeah.
That was like some real mafioso, like, holy cow.
Yeah, and then they found another one. She was in her car off the highway. She was left dead in there. There was another one that was all tied. I think it was all tied together too, with that girl.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not all Hyannis. There's beautiful parts of Hyannis, but there's some real ugly spots as well.
Oh yeah, there is.
So Bill, what would you give with your 18 years of experience? What would you give for advice to new police officers or people looking into doing the job?
Well, you gotta have a high threshold for being insulted, or be able to basically take verbal abuse from the public.
Right.
You're constantly under the microscope, even more so now. I mean, it's incredible, the microscope that you're under now, especially with, everybody's got a cell phone or something. So you have to be patient. You gotta have that ability to reel it in. And I'll be honest, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll say something or do something. I'm like, oh boy, I hope there wasn't a cell phone recording that. Because,
right.
I'll say something that could get me in a jam, maybe, as not being the right thing to say.
And that's just part of the job, being a cop. Sometimes people need to know, that it's a good thing you can do for them, because usually the next thing after that is going to jail,
Right. I mean, in a lot of the way, like the way I do my job is I try to get to their level. So let's say I'm getting blasted with profanity. I may use profanity back, just because I want to come down to your level. Now, some people might not think that's professional, but you kind of personalize it by getting to their level. So, but as far as you're asking for advice,
mm-hmm.
It's tough to give advice because, like, my agency that I work for is a lot different than, say, Boston PD or LA PD. But I would say just the ability to have patience in your decision making, like on a scene. Officer safety aside, if you have the time to think through or discuss with other knowledgeable officers that are on scene what to do, go that route before you start slapping on handcuffs or whatever.
Right.
Just be patient in your decision making.
I remember some old timers telling me, you can arrest someone, and then it's a big book. We'll find something.
Yeah.
Don't go that route.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest advice I can give is just patience.
Yeah, you're right. You need a lot of it.
Yeah.
How do you feel like a lot of guys that come on the podcast, they feel like a lot of the stuff they're dealing with is kind of fueled by the media, because the media always has been kind of sensational. That's how they sell their wares. You know, they need to make things sensational. A lot of times it's at the expense of police, and anybody who denies that is a crazy person, because it's obvious. You'll see this front page, and then you'll never hear about it again, because it turns out after someone did a little investigative journalism, 2/3 of those things they said were untrue, or they were coming to conclusions. So being a guy who's dealing with this on the road, I mean, you're having people probably sound off on all this misinformation that's being broadcast, right?
Oh yeah. And that's the state that we live in right now. Everybody's in such a rush to get information or want information. Everything has to be instant now, and the media is no exception, I think. But I mean, I want to be clear. The media is important. They're the watchdog of what law enforcement does. I mean, they're the watchdog not only for us, but for like politicians, big business, any issue that affects our way of life.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to, say that there's not a need for them. Obviously there is, but they just need to be accurate and honest in their information, because, I mean, that's really what we want. We hunger for the knowledge. We want the knowledge. But nowadays it seems like you're not getting facts. You're not getting truth. You're getting biased opinions, both on, we call it progressive and conservative, Democrat, Republican, whatever. It's the news you're getting now it's biased, and it's biased to, I think, just play into your feelings, because think about it. We don't want to be, or we've been, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody is a winner. We don't want to be disappointed. That's what I think the media is playing into. So they're going to feed a certain audience that's going to tune in every night to them.
Right.
And they're not going to give you something you don't want to hear, because they want you to tune in the next night. So
right, you have an opinion, and most people don't want to be challenged on that, because that's work. You don't want to have to look into things. You kind of have the way you feel. You're going to go with your feelings. So that's the easy way to that just perpetuates that. And the news cycle now is like every half an hour, it seems like there's a new story. So the good thing is a lot of stuff just goes away, because there's just so much being generated.
Well, yeah, and it gets back to the point that you said originally. It's like they blast out information. They're in such a rush to get the story out there. They'll blast out information. It's either false or their slant on it or whatever. They're not waiting for facts, but they just want to be the first person to get it out there. And once the facts actually come out, the damage is already done. I mean, you saw that, 4 or 5 years ago, which is when I think it really changed for law enforcement. There were a false narrative being pushed. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I think we all know the case. But the media coverage on that, they were quick to pump out, a false narrative that just wasn't true. And then after that, I think it kind of spiraled from that incident 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one the federal government got involved in. They wanted nothing more than to hang that cop, but it couldn't be done. But
right.
The way it was spun, it makes everybody on super lefties go, how is this possible? Well, because there was facts involved that everybody went over that you're not privy to all these things right now. That was a disaster. But I guess, they do tell us in Police Academy, they tell you, or when you're getting ready to be a cop, they're like, no one's going to thank you. People mostly don't like you.
Right.
I guess that's true. And unfortunately, it's just more now. I just feel like it's, and it seems like like you said, the last couple of years, it's really ramped up. Like it's really in your face.
Oh yeah, definitely. They, stemming from 4 or 5 years ago, they really put law enforcement in a no-win situation, because they're the voice who controls information, the information of the people. And if they put that information out that's false or misleading or whatever, you may get a little blurb later on saying, oh, this wasn't correct. But by then, like I said, the damage was done. And what happened is from those incidents 4 or 5 years ago, every incident after that has been shown on news cycles or on the website or whatever, and it just continues to put cops in a bad light. It puts us under scrutiny that I don't think is deserved because of a lot of the incidents that you see on the news or read online are not, most of the times they're not factual. Now, there are bad cops. I'm not going to say that we're all perfect, and there are bad shoots or whatever, but the media has caused such a frenzy over this incident that a lot of their information is just false. It's just wrong. And it's really put us in a bad spot.
Yeah. And like you said, that they're not the enemy, but they have such power. So when it's almost like they figure, and I kind of get the train of thought where it's like, well, you're the cops, you can handle it. It's almost like, you know what I mean? Like we're going to wail on you. You'll be okay. You're kind of expected to just be this to absorb any abuse thrown your way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a pet owner. I love pets, but right now it's more of a crime to kick your dog than it is to kick a cop.
Right.
I mean, you get more punishment for kicking a dog than you do kicking a cop. So, I mean, that's kind of where the priorities are. Like you said, that it's kind of expected in the public, in the court system, and the way the laws are written, that it's part of the job. Well, I didn't sign up to get kicked in the face. I don't want to. I know it could happen, but I think because of what the media has done, and I guess more recently you can put politicians, actors, Hollywood in the same block. What they've done has really manifested the lack of respect for law enforcement or any type of authority figure. And because of their rhetoric, which I think most of the time is ignorant or ill-informed, they create this lack of respect, and bad things can only come from that. I think now, a lot of folks, and you see it with, like we said, cops getting ambushed. You can go on, YouTube or Facebook anytime, and there'll be videos there of, car stops where, for no reason. I mean, the cop has done nothing but ask for maybe a license and registration, and all of a sudden it's instant attitude with F-bombs and, insults and stuff like that. And it's all because of.
I would say that's insanity. It's. I mean.
Yeah, it is. But I think it's all been. How do I say it? It's been not pushed, but it's been almost like it's been granted, acceptance that you can do that, and there's no consequence for it. I mean, our own. We have a politician out here. She came out and actually said that the justice system is racist from top to bottom.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
the whole system. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but top to bottom, the whole system's right. I mean, you painted a whole, all police officers, anybody that's involved in trying to protect lives and make streets safe. You've painted everybody as a racist. I mean, what an ignorant thing to say.
That was Pocahontas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to say it. Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a national story. That, I mean, and my hat's off to.
Made it out that way?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was
Okay.
my hat's off is to Chief Fredrickson in Yarmouth. Yeah, that was a great response he had. He was kind of like,
Yeah.
WTF, lady?
Yeah.
We're having enough problems.
She's a mess. She really is. But yeah, I mean, it's changed the way that we do our job too. I think the media is really again they're influential. They're the voice, and they've created basically a shitstorm for us. And I mean, I think the way it's. I don't know if this is actually kind of where you were going with this, but it's really affected our job in a bad way. The media has.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, being a cop, you have to be proactive to protect your citizens. To do this job, you have to be proactive because. If not, all you're doing is responding to calls. And a lot of agencies are like that. I mean, they're so busy, you can't be proactive. But
right.
In an agency, most of the agencies, I think, are smaller agencies, towns, small cities, things like that. You have to be proactive in order to protect your citizens and their property. And I think the media has taken a lot of that away. For several reasons, because of the scrutiny that the media has put on us, and it's like I said before, they should be the watchdog, but I think they're going overboard on this for their ratings. I think they're trying to play into groups to get viewers, to get ratings. So where I'm going with this is they've made it so cops are, I don't want to say afraid to do their job, but they're going to be less proactive, and that's not good for citizens, and that's not good for the cops to not be proactive.
Absolutely, and to echo what you're saying, I've heard that exact same thing. I work with a lot of different large agencies here, and in the course of my job, and they've said the exact same thing. They go, new boots want to graduate, and they want to get on the road for the minimum amount of time, and then get a specialty. They want nothing to do, like no one's getting out of academy going, let's go crack some heads, let's go fight some crime. They're going, I don't want to get sued, I don't want to be on YouTube. I'd like to get a job in plain clothes and not be involved in this whole patrol thing. So you're right.
You're right on. Yeah, you're right on. I mean, there's a chance to make a lot of money in a lot of these agencies, and our job specifically, overtime. We talked briefly. We're down a few bodies. There's overtime because we're so short. Guys don't want overtime. Guys and girls, they don't want the overtime. They would much rather stand in the road doing a traffic detail in blistering heat rather than taking an 8-hour shift with an air conditioner and a nice coffee. For that reason. I mean, and again, it's not to be afraid of the job. None of them are afraid to do the job, because if the shit hits the fan, I know everybody that I work with is going to have my back.
Right.
But they don't want that. They don't want that, like you said, that liability, that possibility that something's going to happen and they're going to be YouTube famous, or they're going to be put on blast on all the news networks that night for saying the wrong thing or doing what they were trained to do. Because they're what happens is, and you've seen it many times, Cops will go out there, they do their job, how they're trained, and the public don't know. Most of the public doesn't know how we're trained. They don't know what we're supposed to do. But because somebody has a video of it, and most of the time when things go bad, it's not pretty. You know, we use batons, we use, you know, tasers and things like that. It's not pretty. And people perceive that as, you know, excessive force or whatever, but most of the time we're doing as we're trained. But that doesn't matter when it makes the news. Because what's going to happen is they're going to get second-guessed by the media, who push that, you know, that narrative to those groups of folks. That creates a mob rule, and you've seen this in like Baltimore. That creates a mob rule that puts pressure on politicians and administrators. And what ends up happening? Good cops get fired, or, you know, they never work again, because agencies don't want that stigma of that incident with their agency. They just want to cut it off.
Yeah.
You know, so you can do everything you were taught the right way, but, you know, you still end up losing at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think when people are seeing a cop struggle with someone on video, I can't help but think it has to do with just how good everybody, like most people in America, have it. Like people love to discount and complain about nitpick America, but they're really not looking at the big picture. How amazing this country is and how soft we are all becoming. Because we are all soft. Like, they see this video of a cop struggling, wrestling someone that slips to a chokehold, doing whatever he can. Hey, he's choking him, or he's doing this. Why is he doing that? Why is he yelling? Have you ever tried to subdue someone? It's incredibly labor intensive, and you run out of energy in like 3 minutes. So if he doesn't get this guy subdued before backup comes, he could have a big problem. He's wearing a gun and a bunch of other weapons. But I think like a lot of the people we seeing becoming cops now even are, and I'm not judging them for it, but have not been in a physical altercation. Maybe didn't.
Oh, you're right.
Maybe didn't play sports. Never got a black eye. Never broke their nose. Never. It's just they're so disconnected from the dirty work that a cop has to do. It's all too easy to be so high on your horse. You know.
No, you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, I mean, there was a video. There was, and I don't even know where it was. There was one guy, he was a big dude, and he's taken on 4 or 5 cops, and he laid a couple of them out pretty good. But all you saw on the internet was 5 cops bashed on this, you know, one man. Well, you didn't get the part of the video where you just laid out 2 or 3 cops, you know.
Right.
So I mean, this guy wasn't going down. They were hitting him with batons. It wasn't even phasing him. And, you know, again, that narrative from the media and the internet is an edited piece of the video, 5 cops assault, you know, use force to take down. You know, it paints, whatever their headline is, it's not pro-cop, like, you know.
Right. It's not even pro-fact.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Bill, can we get to know you a little bit more? And can you tell us about a hobby or a skill that you do that maybe people wouldn't expect a cop to be a part of, or just anything interesting that you do for a hobby?
Sure. Well, for a few years, and before this, I never had any experience in this area. I play with a bagpipe band. I'm a drummer with a bagpipe band. And
that was drumming was new to you as a cop?
I've never played a musical instrument at all.
Wow.
Before this, yeah. And the reason why I fell in love with the bagpipes was we were in. I was in Boston for something. I forgot what it was, and all of a sudden I heard the bagpipes. And in Boston, everything just echoes off the buildings. And I heard the bagpipes playing. I'm like, that's amazing. I loved the sound. And I'm looking for it because you can't tell where it's coming from. I ended up finding it was like I forget. I don't even remember what the name of the band was, but they were playing in Boston. They were just out there playing. And from that point on, and I wasn't even a cop then, I was like, wow, that's really cool. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So when I got on the job, there was a guy on my job who I became really good friends with. He played in a bagpipe band, and I was like, man, I'd love to do that, but I've never played a musical instrument. And he was like, well, just come to a practice. And I was like, okay, never expecting to play a drum. My thought was like, oh, maybe I could pick up a bagpipe or something. How tough can it be? Right. So I go to this practice or whatever, and I'm looking at it, and I'm talking to some people and stuff afterwards and stuff like that, and they're telling me all about the bagpipe and how it goes. I'm like, I do not have that kind of coordination to play a bagpipe with the blowing and the squeezing, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, the person, lovely lady who's running the drum corps, Katie Zanella, the band is Call 'em Kill from Cape Cod. She runs the drum corps. She was like, hey, do you got rhythm? I was like, sure. She goes, well, tell you what, why don't you try drums? I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try drums. So I started playing just the big bass drum at first, which, you've got, a 4/4 march is you just basically hitting the drum when your foot hits the ground, which is real simple.
Well, you're a big dude. I can see them being like, you should carry this one.
Yeah, and they usually like the big guy carrying the big drum right at the front, because you like the middle post for where they're supposed to go. So from there, I just went into the snare drum, and like I said, we do competitions all over New England. The band's gone to Scotland a few times now.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's really fun. So yeah, that's enjoyable. It's tough lately. It's tough trying to make a lot of the practices and gigs and stuff because I'm so busy with work. But that's one of the things I really love.
That's awesome. I think the last picture I saw of you were using the big drum. So is it new, the snare drum, or is it the last couple of years?
No, actually, the bass drum was just briefly.
Oh, okay.
I played the bass drum while I was learning the snare.
Oh, gotcha.
And then let's see, I've been with the band probably. It's got to be at least 10 years now. I figured out the snare fairly quickly. It was nonstop practice. There were many of midnight shifts I had, and I always told Katie, because I would record our lessons.
Yeah.
And I'd tell Katie, I go, Katie, you were up with me at 2 a.m. going over that set. So because I would just have her video playing, and I would just be practicing on a practice pad in the cruiser. It gets a little lonely at like 4 a.m. when nothing's going on. Yeah,
right. That's awesome. I can't think of a better outlet than a stressful job than playing music,
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Oh, thanks again for having me, Steve.
All right, brother.
All right.
Thank you for checking out the podcast. If you want to show support for the show, you could go ahead and go to iTunes, click subscribe, rate it, and review it. If you want to reach the show, you have questions for me, or maybe you're a law enforcement officer that would like to come on the show, it's thingspolicesee@gmail.com. Go ahead and write me questions or requests or whatever. I love interacting with you guys, and I appreciate every email I get. I'd love to get some things that would be high on my priority list. If you guys are wanting to respond, would be more female officers. That would really be great. And also officers from overseas. I've gotten some emails from officers from other countries, but no one really has wanted to be interviewed yet. So if you're overseas and you have a pretty solid grasp on the English language, I would love to have you come on. So let me know, shoot those at me, and I will see you next time.